Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share an unboxing and first look at the MSI MEG X870e Godlike Motherboard for AMD Ryzen CPUs. Now specifically, this is an AM5 board like any other, which means support for 7000, 8000, and 9000 series AMD chips. I'll specifically be using the 9950X3D, arguably the best processor on the market for at least my use case, which is hybrid workstation capability. So I want to be able to game, which I do on a regular basis, as well as get my work done in the most efficient possible way. And that's exactly what that chip has to offer. Now, originally, I was going with the Asus, the X870F, something I unboxed a while back. But I kind of started flirting with the MSI Godlike and just said, you know what? It seems like the perfect board for what I do. Granted, its price is ridiculous at $1,099 US. By the way, I will include a link in the description for those of you interested in purchasing one as well. Granted, I don't think there will be many of you that will want to buy this because at the end of the day, it is just another AM5 motherboard, and it's not going to change the performance of your CPU or GPU. What it will do is change the way you use your system, specifically in my use case scenario. So let me go and flip over this beast, which does weigh a ton, not literally, but it certainly seems like it, especially for someone like me who can barely lift anything up, still post-op here. But this thing has everything. I mean, the kitchen sink has been thrown in. It launched, I think, about 4 months ago. And ever since that launch, I was attracted to it, but I didn't know if I was going to do a new build. And I certainly didn't think I'd consider a board that was over $1,000. I mean, this is more than double the price of the Asus Strix board that I was mentioning earlier. But it has so much going on. I mean, 7 NVMe slots. You heard right, 7. One native Gen 5 full function slot, I think with 8 lanes. But then you also have this guy, which is an M.2 NVMe expansion that gives you 2 more sleds for Gen 5 drives, and it pockets into another PCIe lane. I mean, or slot, I should say. So this is just really dynamic. 10 and 5 gig LAN, which means 10 gig will be going to my ISP, 5 to my NAS, or vice versa, depending on your plan, of course, and if you have a NAS. But if you have one of these, I mean, you're pretty much building a server at this point. This is, by the way, not a traditional ATX. It is an extended ATX board. For those of you unfamiliar, invented by an engineer at Intel in '95. Thank you, Intel, for all the crap Intel gets. They deserve a lot more respect, in my opinion. USB 4. They're saying 40G. It's really Thunderbolt 4. I mean, you're getting the 40 gigabit throughput. There are 2 of these ports. Smart buttons for, the BIOS flashing, all of that good stuff. I could go over all of this. I mean, you see the total 7 slots. We have an excellent audio card built in. So, I mean, I'm not going to say you're going to get, creative sound card capability, but it might be. I'll get there when I get there. You have 60 watt out power delivery on this as well, because there are actually a total of, I think, 7 Type-C ports. So just amazing. Also, all of the headers are on the side of the board for clean and neat cable management. Control hub, I don't think you really need to use this. But anyway, let me get this out. Server grade PCB, another good thing to make mention of. The DDR5 memory support, I should definitely mention that. 256 gigs is the max on this, which is a little counterintuitive considering this is an $1,100 board. It's more expensive than many of the PCs that are out there that are, full-blown desktops. But again, they've tried to think of everything, and, well, they kind of have. So let me flip this sucker over one more time. Again, this should be the last motherboard I'll be buying for quite some time. I'm hoping this is going to last me at least 5 years. And I don't have a 5090, as I've mentioned, but considering the 5090 doesn't really blow away the 4090, I'm not crying, I can assure you. Now, okay, very nice packaging. Something I want to point out about this, I do have an MSI GPU as well, and I am going to be, for the most part, not everything will be MSI. I am going with an MSI case. I switched over from the Thermaltake. It looks like I have this upside down, so I wondered, well, maybe I don't. I'm trying to figure this out. It seems like this is upside down. So let's try the other way. Sorry that this is not the most seamless unboxing of this guy, but again, it is a behemoth. Yeah. Dust that off. And now you finally see the front. I'm glad I paused that unboxing and saved it from itself, or from me, really. Beyond the norm, meet Godlike. There's a reason I didn't call this a quick unboxing. Voila. So as you open the box, it actually projects out. So I'm going to have to get a little more room on this. Yeah, it's not really giving me, but I'm going to have to hold it. Still a little bit cockamamie, as I would say. But beyond the norm, meet Godlike. Hopefully you see that text. And there's the board. Now, I didn't mention this, but the board isn't just crazy in terms of, its storage expansion and the fact that, of course, you have Wi-Fi 7. I mentioned that before because, man, if it didn't have Wi-Fi 7, it wouldn't be Godlike. It would be Schmuck-like. But I think MSI should move away from Godlike in the naming anyway. Beast-like would be better, Beast mode. But then, Marshawn Lynch would have to get a check. Maybe that's a good idea. MSI, if you're listening, let's get God out of the name. It's weird. But 3.99-inch LCD right here. This is detachable. I believe it's magnetic. This will also show you postcodes or anything like that. Customizable to some degree. All the NVMe slots right now are covered with heat sinks. They have double-sided, they have heat sinks, but then beyond that, the things that are addressed here for thermals, even the back of this board has another cover on it for thermal properties. I mean, everything that you could think of, well, MSI has thought of. So let me see if I can get this out. This is just very awkward for me. It's really heavy, and I just still kind of in shock. I mean, what I was mentioning before is just that even the thermal pads that are on, I believe they're double-sided for the NVMe. So it's like MSI has gone above and beyond what any normal board manufacturer would do. And again, at $1,099, you've got to. Before I proceed further into going over parts of the board and showing you the headers, here is that expansion card. So let me go ahead and pull that out. None of this is proving to be very easy at an angle. It's more difficult, frankly. I don't want to damage anything, of course. So here's this guy. And look, if you're not going to use this, there isn't a great reason to buy this board. I mean, yes, it's awesome to have the ability to put 7 NVMEs on this, which I'm going to actually fully populate. No joke. Will I use 3 Gen 5s? No. I'm probably going to use 1 or 2. The balance will be Gen 4. But to know that I've got this and the 2 sleds, so that you can easily just pop these guys out. If I can figure it out, there we go. And you can just drop your storage in. So basically hot swappable Gen 5 drives, so that you do not have to open up your case and, essentially disassemble in order to swap out a drive, is phenomenal. I did not get that sleigh back in properly, but I will figure it out in due time. There we go. So very, very cool. This is arguably, this to me is one of the reasons you would want this board. Not just the number of NVMe slots, but the fact that you actually can throw 3 Gen 5 drives into this. And look, a lot of people are going to say, I don't need Gen 5 drives. They're overpriced. The performance is more synthetic, benchmarking related than real world. And yes, that argument's all good and dandy. But if, like me, you actually are ready to take the leap because you think it's going to change your workflow at all, because when it comes to video editing, that probably is the best application, not so much with gaming. You might get a second of speed difference. That to me is not worthwhile. But every second counts for me with my business. So we're going to see how this goes. But this is one of the killer features of this board. Let me go ahead and put that down. Hot swappable NVMEs that also happen to be Gen 5. You're kind of speaking my love language. My wife might not agree. Actually, she would. Don't read too much into that. Your Wi-Fi antenna. So let's see if I can open this cleanly. This guy, pretty straightforward. Not expecting anything so special here, like any board's Wi-Fi antenna. Kind of don't even want to start going through all of this because it's a lot of stuff, folks. But, I'm very excited about this build. And this, I've never felt like the motherboard is the star of the show. And it's not. But to some degree, this board absolutely is. And it's also the reason that I know my upgrade path, I'm not going to be itching, so to speak. So the leads for the antenna that will hook up to the motherboard, I'll be showing you the I/O on the board shortly. Then the antenna base and the antenna itself. And, in all likelihood, you maybe don't need this in my particular workstation in my office. I probably won't, but we'll see. It's all going to be about, can I pull, peak throughput on the Wi-Fi 7 board? I should be able to, but we're going to find out. My reboxing of this is not going to be excellent. I already know that. This is the hub for essentially all the fans right here. And I'm pretty sure you don't need to use this. So optional equipment, but I'll find out, as they refer to it, the Easy Control Hub. And again, just MSI trying to cover all of the bases possible. You can see they're just showing you fan 1, bridge. Hopefully this is legible. And then I'm even having trouble seeing it. ARGB 2, fan 2, fan 4, fan 6, and RGB. So essentially taking care of the fan headers right there with a little control unit. Accessories, I think you all know what's going to be in here. This is like the least exciting portion. If I can actually get it out of this fitted slot, is being very difficult, but I got it. And this is just going to be all the cabling for the board that you would find with any board. But again, I have a feeling MSI will have gone slightly overboard. See what I did there? Because this is the Godlike one, and yeah, at any rate, I'm not going to go through all of these. You'll see them when the system is actually built, but everything should be there. And then some extras, because God knows, see what I did there again? If they didn't give you any duplicates on anything, you might be in deep doo-doo. So let's see what else we have in here, because there is one more thing. Aha. So we have our extra screws, it looks like. Thermal pads for the NVMEs. Let me see. So, little thumb drive that has all the applicable drivers for the board. That's good. A key, I believe this is to remove, I don't know if it's the screws for the socket. It's screws on something in here, but it's a little proprietary key to help with that. We have the thermal pads here. So I see 1, 2 additional. Some extra screws for the NVMEs, I assume. And then just some paperwork, as you would also expect. And them letting you know to scan their QR code for step-by-step install instructions. So you've seen it all. Let's look at the board now. Pack this up as best I can so I don't give myself too much of a headache when I come back to it. And again, for me, part of the reason the Godlike board appealed is that it really can fulfill just about everything I would ever want to do with my PC. And I cannot stand hubs. I mean, when I say I can't stand them, we all have had to live with them forever. It's something where if you need extra connectivity, you need it, and you don't have an option. But with a board like this, Thunderbolt hubs are a thing of the past for me. That's what's so exciting, and you're going to see why. So let me go ahead and actually remove this. I'm trying to be as careful with this as I can. It is not very easy to get this out of here, because it is just such a thick one, let me tell you. Looks like I got to go top first. Interesting way they did this. Yep, that is the key. So I'm going to just flop this guy down, unpocket it. Okay, wow, it is a beast. So the MSI Dragon, of course, let me go ahead and bring this in tight. And so this way you get a look at everything. So basically, again, that nearly 4-inch display that runs here. We have another LED over here that does some branding. This is another, it's like an RGB festival, okay? But then you have your quick release for access to the NVMEs. You can see right here, please remove the heatsink to access the marked mounting holes and install the motherboard into the case. I mean, everything I've seen, they've done a really good job at spelling things out. So even if you're a novice builder, I think you're going to be able to get through this. Plus, YouTube's always there to hold your hand, right? That's the beauty of it. But basically, all of these, to my knowledge, are, or at least I thought they were magnetic. I believe this guy, I thought, was also a magnetic cover, but I'm not going to start pulling things off again. This is my first time actually looking at the board in person. Let me go ahead and just put this on its side for a second and show you that I/O, because it is totally insane. So as you can see, top left of the board, and excuse me for it wobbling, but you know, I am still in recovery, folks. But you can see all of the Type-C ports along the top. It's just hard for me to see them at the same time, but the 40 gig ports, it really Thunderbolt 4, USB 4 ports right here. So those are going to be your highest throughput on this board. Then you have 3 additional Type-C ports. I believe those are all 1 gigabit or 1 gigabyte, so 10 gigabit capable. So those are 3.2, Gen 2. Then we've got an additional down here, as you can see. and then another one, which I believe is capable of power delivery. So as I mentioned, as you can see, you got a total of 7 ports, which is totally insane, okay? Totally insane on Type-C. I've never seen a board that has that many, and there's no USB 2.0 here, folks. When it comes to our Type A ports, same story. They are all 10 gigabit throughput, so 1 gig theoretical, really crazy. You will be connecting your mouse and keyboard, well, I will be, I should say, to ports that are capable of a gig a second. It's kind of hilarious. Ethernet, I mentioned 10 gig LAN, 5 gig LAN, ideal for those of you like myself who are connecting to a NAS for heavy workloads, want the obviously seamlessness of that speed, that throughput for file transfer. Now you've got it without getting an Intel card, which is what I was using previously. Love that everything's going to be built in here. And I believe the 5 gig is, if my memory serves, I think the 10 gig is a Marvell, and then the 5 gig is just a traditional Realtek for everyone that's curious. And I think it's just because Realtek isn't rolling out 10 gig NICs. That's not surprising. Optical out, your antenna ports for your Wi-Fi 7 capable antenna, mic in and out, and of course, all of your buttons for, again, BIOS, flash, reset, etc. So everything you could think of is there. But then the other really cool thing is that as I turn this monster over, go over here, we get to the headers. And I mention this because it is really something else. Let me turn this so that it's legible. Not trying to make anyone nuts here. So as you can see, they've designed this very much, let me move over the card, with cable management in mind. It was, really an extension, I feel like, of their Project Zero push with getting rid of the wires. And I think it's smart. It makes me just wonder why something like this didn't happen sooner. So basically, all of the headers are on the right side of the board, but then, it's everything you expect. It's just organized and it's neat, and it's going to make your life, I presume, hopefully it's going to make our lives a lot easier. Is it the reason to spend $1,100 plus tax? Absolutely not. Really, it's about the storage. It's about the 10 and 5 gig NIC. It's about having this expansion card, which literally nothing else like it on earth exists. Those are the reason that this carries the premium that it does. Besides the fact that I wouldn't imagine that MSI has really made that many of these boards. So it is very much for the geeks and nerds among us, like myself. I consider this to be a piece of art. Yes, put that in your pipe and smoke it. So again, I can't really see this stuff. I'd have to be above it, and my preview monitor isn't helping. But as you can see, all the headers are here, GPU right here. I believe it's the CPU next to it, but again, I can't really see very well. Yeah, not the CPU next to it, but everything is here. You have your USB headers with power delivery. I believe this is a 20 gigabit right here. So 2 gig a second, the 2x2, everything is here. So it's just really neatly done, and a lot of thought into making this look as good as it should perform. And then you can see we've got a backplate, Godlike branding on the left side, if you can make that out. And again, it's about heat dissipation, and it's just, man, is this thing a piece of art, as I just stated. Let me go ahead and flip this around as best I can. I've got more parts coming in. You can see we've got power button there. I was under the impression, let me go ahead and make this a little bit wider, but I've got to spend some time with it, and this is the first time I have it in hand. I've got to look at the instructions a little bit. This has a quick release. I believe there's a button for it, so you can see here we have the traditional release switch. I believe there is a quick release on this. I'm not sure where it is, but we'll get there. And the same applies to all of this. So I was under the impression this is magnetic, but I don't want to really pull any more than I already am here. So we will find out. It looks like that's the lever. So yeah, that's it. So I'm glad I used my brain. Insert your joke there. So this should also release. There we go. And you start to see all of those NVMe slots. And yeah, main one, I believe the Gen 5 with 8 lanes is right here. And by the way, each of these is actually labeled. Now that I'm looking at it, I can see they've labeled every one of the slots with their functionality. The typeface is too small from where I'm seated. I would need, telescope eyeballs, but Even with glasses, I'm not going to be able to read that to you. But you can see we've just got NVMEs on NVMe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, as I mentioned, this guy gives you 2 more, specifically Gen 5. So 3 Gen 5 in total. And it's really just amazing. We've got some other SATA headers down here. Those are kind of the only headers that are not living on the right side of the board, as I mentioned earlier. And that pretty much rounds it out. Again, this is just a beast. Looks like I got a little dust there. And it's kind of back-ordered now, which is surprising, but also not, because if you are in the market for something like this, it's your only choice, really. So again, I don't think a lot of you are going to run out and spend $1,100 plus tax on a board like this. But if you're like me and you're probably skipping the 5000 series GPUs, because that's what it's looking like. First time I've ever skipped a generation. But this is honestly, and I never say that because I'm always being honest here, the least inspiring generation from NVIDIA ever. And I'm as big a fanboy for NVIDIA as I possibly could be. I mean, I first started following them in the mid-90s, invested in them. Sadly, didn't hold it as long as I would have liked. But still, I've loved watching NVIDIA become the monster that it is today. I know a lot of people resent them and think they're a greedy company, but I like to look on the bright side, which is that without them, where would we be right now? Think about that. But again, this is an amazing board. I'm going to be spending more time with it, getting the build, hopefully going this weekend. And if everything goes without a hitch, you'll be seeing this inside the MSI MEG Maestro 700 very soon. Again, outfitted with the Ryzen 9000 9950X 3D, 64 gigs of Corsair Titanium Dominator RAM, CL30 timing, and then I've got a Gen 5 SAMI 9100 2 terabyte drive to run the show as the main, as the OS drive. I will be running Windows 11 if anyone was curious. I mean, it should be fairly obvious. I would have liked to have gone for more than 64 gigs of RAM on here, but we're just not there yet, in my opinion, where it makes sense. The highest capacity, is going to be a little under 100 gigs, as we all know, but I can't get that at a CL30 timing. I know that's a negligible difference, but still a difference I'm not interested in giving up at present. And one thing I didn't show that I want to, as I mentioned before, the double-sided, what's it called? Thermal. Brain fart city here. But the thermal pads being double-sided is another, I found it eventually, is another really nice thing that, again, you're not going to see from any manufacturer out there. Who's giving you double-sided pre-installed thermal pads? Nobody. So, and yes, that's not a big ask at this price, but still, it didn't need to be there. It's like MSI really took this seriously, and I appreciate it because it's a lot of engineering that goes into making something like this. The only other company that I feel like does this is Asus, and even they don't do this. So really, MSI, Asus, those are probably my two favorite manufacturers because they push the envelope. They produce things that some of you might think are ridiculous, and then some of us say, why didn't someone do this sooner? And I feel like unless I have a lot of problems with this, once I get it in the case and everything going, I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where, it's not one man's junk is another man's treasure, but because this ain't junk, but you know what I'm saying. Either way, we're going to see if this lives up to its godlike designation. I think it will. Tell me what you think. It's definitely overkill, but do you see, like myself, a need for a board like this? Really the end-all of motherboards, at least until we enter a new realm of capability. And yeah, the money that I'm saving on that overpriced, really gouged out 5090, I have no problem sinking it in here, knowing my 4090, also from MSI. It's the Slim that I unboxed back, what was it? The end of 23? No, it was 24. That's going to be still the star of the show. So we'll see how that all pairs together. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.